I didn't tell the police everything I found under my parents' house. Mostly because I knew how insane it sounded. But the truth is, whoever had been living down there knew I was alone before I ever realized they were there. And I still don't know how long they'd been watching me. It started during the last week before I moved back to campus. My parents had recently bought this older house outside a small town in northern Pennsylvania. The place sat at the end of a gravel road surrounded by thick woods that blocked out almost everything. No nearby neighbors, no street lights. At night, the property became pitch black. I hated it immediately. Not because it looked creepy or abandoned. Honestly, during the day, it seemed normal enough. Just old. Floors that creaked, doors that never shut right. That kind of house. My parents left for a trip that Monday morning and asked me to stay behind to watch the dog. Before leaving, my dad gave me a quick rundown of random house stuff. He mentioned the fuse box, the unreliable hot water, and then he casually said something weird. There's no basement, by the way, just a crawl space underneath the house. I stayed up late gaming, ordered takeout, and basically enjoyed having the house to myself. Then Wednesday night happened. Around midnight, I was lying in bed watching YouTube videos when I heard 3 knocks under the floor. Not loud, just knock, 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 directly beneath me. I paused the video and listened. Nothing. A few seconds later, it happened again. Same rhythm. Almost like someone is testing the floorboards from underneath. I remember sitting there, trying to convince myself it was pipes or wood settling. Old houses make noise all the time. But this felt deliberate, controlled. I turned off my lamp and listened harder. That's when I heard something drag slowly beneath the room. Like fabric or a bag scraping across dirt. I barely slept that night. The next morning, everything felt stupid in daylight. The dog acted normally. The house looked normal. I even laughed at myself for getting worked up over noises. But later that afternoon, I noticed something strange. The dog refused to go near the side porch. Every time I tried leading him over there, he'd stop dead and stare underneath the house while whining quietly. That uneasy feeling came back immediately. That night, the noises returned, only this time they were louder. I heard movement beneath the kitchen, then scratching. Long, slow scratching, like fingernails dragging across wood. I froze on the couch listening to it travel underneath the floor. The sound stopped right below me. Then complete silence. I swear I could hear breathing. not mine. Something underneath the floor was breathing slowly. I grabbed my phone and called my dad. He sounded annoyed more than concerned. He told me raccoons sometimes got under older houses and suggested checking the crawl space entrance outside. I didn't want to, but around noon the next day, I finally forced myself. The crawl space entrance was hidden beneath the back porch, behind some weeds and stacked junk. I had to crouch down to open it. The smell hit me first. Wet dirt, rotten wood, some sour underneath it. I used my phone flashlight and crawled halfway inside. The space was tight and filthy. Pipes ran overhead while insulation hung down in strips. But there were no animals, no nests, nothing moving. Then I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. The dirt wasn't untouched. There were marks in it. Long trails, like something heavy had been dragged through there recently. I backed out immediately. That should have been enough for me to leave. Instead, I made the mistake that probably saved my life. I started walking around the outside of the house, trying to figure out where those drag marks led. That's when I noticed a pile of plywood and rusted metal sheets leaning against the far side of the foundation. At first, it looked like abandoned construction junk, but the more I stared at it, the more it looked placed there intentionally, like it was covering something. I remember this horrible feeling building in my chest while I pulled everything away piece by piece. Underneath was a metal door built into the foundation, a storm cellar door. My parents had lived there almost 8 months, and somehow they never mentioned it. I stood there for a solid minute staring at it. The padlock attached to the handles had already been cut, not broken from rust, cut clean through. That was the moment I should have called the police. Instead, I opened it. The smell rising from the lungs unbearable. Not mold, not sewage. I shone my flashlight down the concrete steps disappearing underground. The basement wasn't huge, but it stretched farther than it should have under the house. The blankets covered in coal.
There were empty cans, plastic bottles, cigarette butts, and even batteries piled near the wall. Someone had absolutely been living there recently. Then I saw the drawings. At first, I thought they were stains, but they were carved directly into the wooden beams. Animals twisted together with human faces. Tall black figures standing outside houses. Eyes everywhere. Hundreds of tally marks scratched into the wood beside them. The deeper I looked, the worse it got. And then, my flashlight landed on something that made my blood go cold. A folding chair, positioned beneath a vent, leading straight into my bedroom floor. Whoever stayed down there had been listening to me, maybe watching me. I turned around so fast I nearly fell up the stairs. The second I got outside, I slammed the cellar door shut and dragged the pile of junk back over with shaking hands. Then I drove into town and bought a heavy chain lock. I didn't even care if I looked paranoid. I locked those doors as tight as I could. By then, it was already getting dark. The woods around the house felt different that night. Too quiet. No crickets. No wind. Nothing.
I checked every window twice before going upstairs. I don't think I slept more than an hour. At around 2:13 in the morning, I woke up to metal rattling outside my window. At first, I thought I was dreaming. Then came the banging. Violent banging. The entire side of the house shook. Boom, boom, boom. Like someone was throwing their full body weight against the cellar doors. I sat frozen in bed while the dog downstairs lost its mind barking. The banging stopped suddenly, and for 1 second, everything went dead silent. Then I heard footsteps. Slow footsteps crunching across gravel outside my window. I forced myself to look. Someone was standing near the tree line, tall, completely still. I couldn't see a face, just a dark outline staring directly at the house. Then my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. For a few seconds, there was only static. Then breathing. Slow. Wet. And a voice whispered, "You locked me out." The line disconnected. At that exact moment, the figure sprinted into the woods. Not like a normal person. Fast. Way too fast. I called 911 immediately. Police searched the property before sunrise. They found the basement. They found the blankets and trash. But according to them, there was no evidence anyone had been there recently. That part still bothers me. Because I know what I saw. And I know what I heard. My parents came home the next day and eventually sealed the basement entrance completely with concrete. They sold the house 6 months later. But here's the part I've never been able to explain. A few weeks after moving out, my mom was unpacking boxes when she found something hidden inside one of them. It was a small sketchbook. None of us recognized it. Most of the pages were filled with those same disturbing drawings from the basement. But near the back, there were newer sketches. Detailed drawings of my bedroom. Me sitting at my desk. Me sleeping. And on the very last page, there was a drawing of the entire family standing inside the house. Except that one figure was underneath it, smiling up at us through the floor. Most people think nothing dangerous happens in small farming towns. That's exactly why this story still messes with me. Because whatever happened out there happened in the middle of nowhere, where nobody was supposed to be watching. And to this day, I still don't know if the police covered something up or if they were scared too. It started during the last week of summer in 2018. I was living in eastern Washington at the time, near a stretch of highway surrounded by wheat fields and dead grass for miles. The kind of road where you can drive 20 minutes without seeing another car. I work in maintenance for irrigation systems, so I left home before sunrise almost every morning. One Thursday, around 5:10 a.m., I noticed an old green station wagon parked halfway off the road. No lights, no movement. Driver's door shut. It looked abandoned, but something about it felt strange immediately. Maybe because there was no reason for anybody to stop there. Nothing around for miles except empty fields and a tree line further back near the hills. I remember slowing down just enough to glance inside as I passed. The interior looked dark, not because of tinted windows. More like the inside absorbed the light. I know that sounds stupid, but that's the only way I can explain it. I kept driving. At work, I forgot about it completely. But that night on the way home, the wagon was still there. Only now the driver's side door was open, just hanging there toward the ditch. The wind kept moving it slightly, back and forth, back and forth. I drove past slowly this time, and I swear I saw muddy footprints on the pavement leading away from the car toward the field. Not toward town, toward the trees. I got about 2 miles down the road before I turned around. I don't even know why. Curiosity, I guess. When I got back, I pulled over behind the wagon with my headlights pointed at it. The road was dead silent. No crickets, no cars, nothing. That silence was the first thing that really bothered me. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. The second I closed my truck door, I smelled something weird. Wet dirt, rotten water, like a flooded basement. The inside of the station wagon was empty, except for fast food wrappers and a phone charger plugged into the console. The keys were still in the ignition. That immediately felt wrong. People don't leave keys behind. I yelled out a few times, thinking maybe somebody got hurt nearby. No answer. Then, my flashlight caught something in the dirt beside the road. A footprint. Barefoot. And deep enough, like whoever made it had been running. There were more leading toward the field. That was enough for me. I got back in my truck and called county dispatch. The woman on the phone sounded half asleep. She thanked me and said they'd send someone out to check it. I drove home trying to convince myself it was nothing. The next morning, the wagon was gone. No police, no tow marks, nothing. Just empty roadside grass moving in the wind. I probably would have forgotten about the whole thing if it ended there. But 6 days later, I saw a missing person report on Facebook. A guy named Daniel Mercer, 32 years old, last seen driving home from Spokane in a green station wagon. Same car, same highway. My stomach dropped immediately. The sheriff's office said there were no signs of criminal activity, but the comments underneath were filled with people saying the story didn't make sense. One woman claimed her husband saw police searching fields near the highway late at night after he Another person said helicopters were out there for hours. Then suddenly the post stopped, like people got told to shut up. A friend of mine named Curtis volunteered with local search teams sometimes, and he asked if I wanted to help search the area that weekend. I said yes before I even thought about it. There were around 15 of us total. Some volunteers, a couple of deputies, 2 firefighters. The area we searched was bigger than I expected. Dry fields, irrigation canals, patches of trees. An easy place for somebody to disappear. About an hour in, one of the guys called over the radio, saying he found a trail. Not a real trail. More like flattened grass leading into heavy brush. We followed it maybe 50 yards before we saw the structure.
At first, I thought it was part of an old storm shelter. Concrete walls, rust-covered metal door, half buried into the hillside. If you weren't standing right in front of it, you'd never notice it existed. The door was already cracked open. One deputy told us to stay outside while he checked it. The moment he stepped in, he stopped talking. Complete silence. Then he backed out slowly and told everyone not to enter. That should have been enough warning. But while they were arguing over the radio, I moved closer anyway. I could see inside from the doorway. There were blankets on the floor, empty soup cans, bottles of water. Whoever had been there had stayed for a while. Then I noticed the wall. At first I thought it was mold stains, but they weren't stains. They were handprints, dozens of them, pressed into the concrete. Some small, some huge, all layered over each other like people had been touching the walls over and over. And near the back corner, there was a chain bolted to the floor. I remember this horrible cold feeling hitting me in the stomach. One of the firefighters walked past me with a flashlight and suddenly froze. He pointed toward the rear wall. There was a tiny hole in the concrete, perfectly round. A bullet hole. And somebody else noticed another one, and another. The entire mood changed instantly. Deputies started forcing everybody back toward the road. No explanations. No discussion. One of them actually grabbed Curtis by the arm and threatened to arrest him if he stayed. As we were leaving, I looked back one last time, and I saw something I still think about constantly. There was somebody standing inside the shelter, not moving, just barely visible in the darkness behind the doorway, watching us leave. I thought it was another officer at first, until the figure tilted its head, way too slowly, way too far. That night I barely slept. I kept replaying the image in my head. And the next morning, I searched online for updates. Nothing. No news articles. No search continuation. The sheriff's office page removed the missing person post entirely. By Monday, it was like Daniel Mercer had never existed.
No mention of him anywhere. Even the Facebook posts were gone. That scared me more than the shelter did. About 3 weeks later, I drove back out there alone. I needed to know if I imagined it. I parked near the same stretch of highway and walked into the fields. I found the flattened grass trail again. But when I reached the hillside, the shelter was gone. Not closed, gone. The dirt looked untouched. No concrete, no door, no debris, nothing. I searched for almost 2 hours. I know I found the right spot because the chain link fence nearby was still there, but the structure itself had completely disappeared. Like somebody erased it. Right before I gave up, I noticed something near the brush beside the hill. A phone charger, covered in dirt. The same kind I saw inside the station wagon. And beside it, a fresh barefoot footprint leading into the trees. One footprint. That's it. I left immediately. I never went back. And every year near the end of August, when the fields dry out and the wind starts blowing across those roads again, I think about that buried shelter, the handprints on the walls, and the thing standing in the darkness watching us leave. Because sometimes I wonder if the reason the case disappeared is because they never found out who was hiding in there. Or worse, they did. Last summer, I made a decision that still keeps me awake some nights. And the worst part is, I still don't know if the guy I saw in those woods was actually alone. I used to go camping all the time. Not the family campground type either. I mean real isolation. No people, no cabins, no phone signal. Just miles of forest and complete silence. I work in IT, so honestly, getting away from people for a few days always felt therapeutic. My girlfriend thought it was weird that I liked camping alone, but for me, it was the only time my brain actually slowed down. Back in August, I found this remote spot in northern Montana while scrolling around satellite view online. No marked campsite, no nearby roads, just a clearing deep in the woods near a river. Perfect. The hike took almost 3 hours because the trail basically disappeared halfway through. By the time I reached the clearing, the sun was already low behind the trees. The place looked untouched. Tall pine trees surrounded the entire area like walls. The ground was covered in damp needles and soft moss. There were no fire rings, no trash, no signs that anyone had been there recently. At least that's what I thought. While setting up my tent, I noticed something strange near the tree line. A folding chair. Just one. Old and faded, half collapsed in the dirt. I remember staring at it for a second, thinking maybe another camper had abandoned it years ago. It wasn't that creepy at the time, just odd. I moved it aside and kept unpacking. That first night was peaceful. The temperature dropped hard after sunset, and the forest got unbelievably quiet. I cooked some canned chili over my small stove, listened to the river in the distance, and sat under more stars than I'd seen in years. I
slept great. The next morning, I grabbed my fishing gear and followed the river north. I spent most of the day out there. Caught 2 decent trout, took pictures. Honestly, it was probably one of the best solo trips I'd had in years. But around late afternoon, clouds started rolling in fast. The woods got darker way earlier than they should have. I headed back immediately, but I realized pretty quickly I'd wandered farther than I thought. The terrain all started looking the same. Trees, rocks, mud. My phone had no signal, but I still used the compass app to keep moving south. That's when I heard the whistle, short, sharp, somewhere behind me. I stopped walking. The forest went dead silent.
No birds, no insects, nothing. I turned around and aimed my flashlight between the trees, expecting maybe another hiker. There was nobody there. I remember actually laughing nervously to myself because I felt stupid for getting jumpy over a random sound. Then, the whistle happened again. Closer. This time it sounded almost deliberate, like someone trying to get my attention without yelling. I called out, "Hello?" No answer. Just wind moving through branches overhead. I started walking faster. About 10 minutes later, I finally spotted the reflective cord from my tent through the trees. I felt this immediate relief hit me. But the second I stepped into the clearing, that feeling disappeared. Someone had touched my stuff. My cooler was tipped over. My backpack had been moved. And the folding chair I tossed aside earlier was now sitting directly across from my tent, facing it. I stood there frozen. There are moments where your body realizes something is wrong before your brain catches up. No birds, no insects, nothing. I turned around and aimed my flashlight between the trees, expecting maybe another hiker. There was nobody there. I remember actually laughing nervously to myself because I felt stupid for getting jumpy over a random sound. Then, the whistle happened again. Closer. This time it sounded almost deliberate, like someone trying to get my attention without yelling. I called out, "Hello?" No answer. Just wind moving through branches overhead. I started walking faster. About 10 minutes later, I finally spotted the reflective cord from my tent through the trees. I felt this immediate relief hit me. But the second I stepped into the clearing, that feeling disappeared. Someone had touched my stuff. My cooler was tipped over. My backpack had been moved. And the folding chair I tossed aside earlier was now sitting directly across from my tent, facing it. I stood there frozen. There are moments where your body realizes something is wrong before your brain catches up.
That's what this felt like. I started looking around the clearing, expecting someone to step out and laugh like it was some dumb prank. Nothing moved. The trees around me were completely still. I packed everything back into the tent as fast as I could and kept telling myself it was probably another camper messing around. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. There were no trails out there, no campsites,
no people. And whoever moved that chair had done it while I was gone for hours, meaning they'd been close enough to watch me leave. I didn't sleep that night. I sat inside the tent holding my knife while rain tapped against the fabric overhead. Every little sound made my heart jump. Branches snapping, leaves shifting. The river is moving in the distance. Around 2 in the morning, I heard footsteps, slow, circling the campsite. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Not an animal, too controlled. I stopped breathing and listened.
The footsteps moved closer to the tent, then stopped completely. Right outside, I could hear breathing, heavy breathing. Whoever it was stood there for almost a full minute without moving. Then came a voice, soft, calm. Hey. I didn't answer. Your fire went out. I remember feeling cold all over because I never built a fire that night. I stayed completely still. Then the person whispered something I'll never forget. I know you're awake. The side of my tent suddenly pressed inward. Not hard, just fingertips dragging slowly across the fabric. I completely panicked. I grabbed the knife and shouted as loud as I could, "Back away from the tent!" Everything went silent again. For maybe 5 seconds, there was nothing. Then footsteps sprinted into the woods at full speed. Not away from camp, around it. Fast circles through the trees, while this person made these horrible choking sounds that almost sounded like laughing.
I could hear branches breaking everywhere around me. At one point, whatever it was ran so close to the tent, I heard feet slide through mud inches from my head. I thought the person was trying to scare me out of the tent. And honestly, it almost worked. Then suddenly, everything stopped. No footsteps, no breathing, nothing. The silence felt worse. I sat there gripping the knife until sunrise. The second daylight hit the trees, I started packing. That's when I noticed the footprints. Bare feet all around my campsite, even behind my tent. Some of them were so close to where I'd been sleeping that I felt sick looking at them. But the thing that really messed me up was what I found beside my backpack. One of the trout I caught earlier. Only now it had been split open and filled with pine needles. I didn't even finish packing. I shoved everything into my truck and drove 3 straight hours without stopping. A few days later, I finally told my older brother about what happened. He got quiet for a second and asked where exactly I'd gone camping. I showed him the location on my phone. And I swear to God, the color drained from his face.
He told me there used to be an old fire lookout station somewhere near that area years ago. Apparently, a man lived out there alone after it shut down. People in nearby towns said he started losing his mind after his wife disappeared. Hunters occasionally reported hearing whistles deep in the woods at night.
A couple of people even claimed they found campsites disturbed while they slept. But here's the part that still bothers me. About a month after my trip, I went through the photos on my camera. Most were just normal pictures of trees, the river, fish, nothing unusual. Until I got to one photo I took that first evening at camp. It was a picture of the clearing right before sunset. And standing between two trees in the background, there was a man watching me, just barely visible in the shadows, staring directly at the camera. I never saw him when I took the picture, which means he was already there before I even finished setting up camp. And sometimes I wonder how long he'd been standing there, watching me, without making a sound.